He is one of the greatest entertainers of all time.
He is one of the top artists ever.
I'll be performing the songs my fans want to hear.
And perhaps the most misunderstood.
You never hear about Michael having a temper. You never hear about him yelling at anybody.
But his superstardom was overshadowed by ugly charges.
Now, I don't care if you're Michael Jackson or if you're Jesus Christ himself. You do not molest children.
Michael Jackson was completely innocent of everything he was charged with.
So when Michael Jackson died, some began to wonder, although sleep-inducing drugs killed him, was his soul already shattered many years before? June 25th, 2009. A day that begins like any other in Los Angeles, California. It's the middle of the summer, and Tinseltown is bustling with activity. But in a heartbeat, the city of angels stops in its tracks. News spreads that Michael Jackson has fallen seriously ill.
Fire paramedic 33, what is your address of emergency?
It begins with a desperate call to 911.
Yes, sir. I need an ambulance as soon as possible, sir.
And what's the problem? Exactly what happened?
Sir, we have a gentleman here that needs help, and he's not breathing. He's not breathing, and we're trying to pump him, but he's not.
Okay, how old is he?
He's 50 years old, sir.
Little does the operator know that the 50-year-old man who is in grave danger is Michael Jackson.
Okay, he's unconscious, he's not breathing?
Yes, he's not breathing, sir.
Is he on the floor? Where's he at right now?
He's on the bed, sir. He's on the bed.
Okay, let's get him on the floor. I'll help you with CPR right now.
The news goes viral, and the world holds its breath as an all-too-familiar Hollywood tragedy begins to play out. Crime writer Aphrodite Jones is in Los Angeles researching another story. When news leaks out that Michael Jackson is seriously ill, Aphrodite Jones is called by several news organizations to comment. In 2007, Jones wrote a book about Michael Jackson, a book that said he was railroaded by the media. Across town, Jackson's manager and close personal friend Frank DeLeo is having lunch in Beverly Hills.
I got a call from a fan who said, "Do you know there's an ambulance in front of Michael's gate?" I said, "You're kidding." I said, "No, I don't know." I said, "Let me find out." I hung up, called Michael's assistant, who said, "I'm on my way to Michael's house. The doctor is with him, but I don't think it's good."
Paramedics take a desperately ill Michael Jackson from his rented house in Bel Air to UCLA Medical Center.
So at this point, do you think he's dead, or do you...
No, I think he's alive.
Because you just saw him the night before.
You're right.
And he's fine.
He is fine.
Absolutely fine.
Absolutely fine.
DeLeo had visited Jackson the night before at the Staples Center, where Jackson was rehearsing for his upcoming concert series, This Is It.
There wasn't chest pains, there wasn't... I mean, not even an inkling?
Nothing. He rehearsed like there was no tomorrow. Michael was never happier in his life.
DeLeo rushes to UCLA Medical Center, where Jackson has been taken. He is one of the first to arrive.
We were sitting outside the room, and we could hear them working, you know, things clattering and pumps going and machinery. And we sat there for maybe an hour, and the nurse came out and said, "Who are you?" And I said, "I'm Frank DeLeo. I'm Michael's manager. How is he?" She went, I said, "What do you mean?" "He's gone. He's been brain dead for maybe 2 hours," she said, "and we're just going to keep him on till his mother gets here."
Outside of the hospital, hundreds of fans have gathered and anxiously await news of Jackson's condition. It's not long before Michael's mother, Catherine Jackson, arrives.
security said, Mrs. Jackson's showing up. We got her into a room. What do you think, Frank? I'm not sure yet. I didn't know what to say, you know? And then I let the doctor, this cardiologist, was standing by, tell her. I was very emotional. She grabbed me right away and we cried.
One of the things that you had to do, aside from telling Katherine Jackson that her son was passed away, is you had to actually go to Michael's children at the hospital.
Yeah.
And tell them.
Mm-hmm.
What was that like?
That was one of the roughest things I've ever done in my life. I went in with the social worker and the doctor, and they were in there with a nanny. And I had to tell them, and it was, what happened in that room should stay in that room. But it was extremely emotional. Extremely emotional. Just one of the saddest things I ever had to do.
News of Jackson's death triggers an international outpouring of grief.
Michael really didn't understand demographics, age, race, nationality. Everybody loved him.
Pearl Jr. is a documentary filmmaker who has reported extensively about the life and times of Michael Jackson.
For a long time before I covered the trial, I didn't know what a real fan was.
You and I had talked about this, I think, some years ago.
For the past 4.5 years of my life, since covering the trial, he had been an everyday presence in my life. So I end up knowing a lot about him, meeting family members, talking to them, and you just consider yourself a Michael Jacksonologist after a while.
When attorney Tom Mesereau watches news coverage of Jackson's death, he sees two different stories. As the lawyer who successfully defended Jackson in his 2005 molestation trial, Mesereau sees the emotional response of loyal fans as genuine. But when he reads the heartfelt comments of Michael's so-called closest friends, he sees hypocrisy.
All these people are coming out of the woodwork now trying to pretend that they loved him, they cared about him. And I happen to know, because I was in the inner sanctum preparing his defense, that many of these people refused to get involved at all when we needed them. There were a number of celebrities who've been on television professing their great love for him. I know when we approached them that they refused to cooperate. They didn't want to get involved.
In 2005, Tom Mesereau represented Jackson in what the media dubbed a notorious trial of the century.
Did you ever think he was capable of molesting a child?
Never. When I first got into the case, I didn't know him. I enter every case with an open mind. I want to get to know the client as a human being, and I want to look at the evidence.
And yet, for Michael, his life was on trial.
I didn't care what the media or anybody else was saying. I wanted to see what I was going to see. And very quickly, I realized that this person was incapable of molesting or harming any child.
Jackson was indicted on 10 felony counts of conspiracy and child molestation against a 13-year-old cancer survivor who stayed with him at his Neverland ranch. For Mesereau, this was one of the final brutal attacks on the performer, attacks that had lasted more than a decade. Attacks that, in Mesereau's opinion, struck at the core of Michael Jackson. While the news media concentrates for years on publicizing what they dubbed the obsessive behavior of the eccentric artist, Mesereau notices a preoccupation from another source. The prosecution team, headed by Santa Barbara County District Attorney Tom Sneddon.
I do think he was obsessed to the point of absurdity. And I think that what really proves that is the fact that he would ask a grand jury to indict Michael Jackson for conspiracy to abduct children, to falsely imprison a family, to commit criminal extortion, in addition to these, false allegations of child molestation.
In his view, Michael Jackson was using Neverland as a sinister place to lure children in, and he was never going to be swayed from his view, because I'm the law in Santa Barbara County.
Paul Rodriguez was the jury foreman in Michael Jackson's 2005 molestation trial.
Why do you think that the DA wanted to go after so many various charges on Michael Jackson?
He just came across like he was just trying to do anything he could to persuade us to look at things his way regardless of the evidence, but he just wanted, it's almost like he had a vendetta against him. And one way or another, I'm going to get you before I retire.
Reporters turned the 2005 Michael Jackson trial into a media circus. Attorney Tom Mesereau's research into the case convinces him that defending Jackson may be a major personal risk, but one worth taking.
When you took this case, people thought that it was unwinnable. They thought that you were crazy to represent Michael Jackson.
I had friends and colleagues tell me that the rest of my career would be defined by the Michael Jackson trial and that it was unwinnable. And that if he went to prison, that everywhere in the world, my face would be vilified. It didn't take me very long to figure out that these claims were complete fabrications, that Michael Jackson was completely innocent of everything he was charged with.
4 years later, Jackson is dead. The Los Angeles County coroner rules Michael Jackson's death a homicide caused by acute intoxication following lethal levels of sedatives combined with the anesthetic propofol. For Mesereau, the cause of death goes beyond what happened the day Jackson died. Those events simply represent the culmination of 16 years of torture that Jackson endured. A period that begins with a separate case back in 1993.
You don't know? The Jackson 5.
To understand Michael Jackson the man, one has to attempt to understand Michael Jackson the child. In the mid and late 1960s, Michael Jackson was the lead singer for one of the most popular and successful groups in the country, the Jackson 5.
Michael joined the group when he was 5, but the group didn't get signed to Motown where they really had any money until he was 11. So you have 6 years of Joe, taking the kids everywhere and having them perform and sleep in hotel rooms.
It was the extraordinary dedication to work that Michael embraced at this young age that would lead him to be one of the greatest entertainers in the world. His focus on excellence brought him to heights never seen by any other performer. And the fruits of those labors were never more apparent than where Michael Jackson was in 1993. He has an $890 million contract with Sony. His bad and dangerous world tours have become the 2 largest grossing concerts of all time. But despite all his success, Michael never loses sight of something that matters to him a great deal, being sure that those less fortunate than him are given a chance. Those who knew Michael Jackson, especially those who knew him in the early part of his career, believed that Jackson had solid values and was sincere. One of those people is Joanne Horowitz.
To me, he was a normal guy. He really, really, truly was a nice guy. No airs, no attitude. I don't think in all the publicity that's come out, you never hear about Michael having a temper. You never hear about him yelling at anybody. He was genuinely a nice person.
I think people are curious about who is Michael Jackson and who was he in his lifetime. He didn't fit into any particular culture.
When I met him, he was a practicing Jehovah's Witness. They don't drink or do drugs or anything. Back when I met him, it was a pretty innocent time.
When we were in Europe and we were doing the Bad Tour, every city we went to a children's hospital and bought them a piece of equipment. Not one hospital for the whole tour. Every city.
Was that Michael's idea?
Yeah. They had a little boy that was dying and wanted to meet Michael. And Michael went up and talked to him, and the kid perked up, and it was like amazing. And I went off to the corner. I cried. I really couldn't take it. And Michael came over and put his arm around me and said, "You have to understand, Frank, this is our job. Not on the stage. This is our job. To make somebody feel good." He believed that. He absolutely believed that.
It is at this time in 1992 that Michael has a chance encounter that will change his life forever. Driving down Wilshire Boulevard in Los Angeles, Michael's car breaks down. Disguised in a black turban, scarf, and mirrored sunglasses, he walks to a nearby rental car facility where he meets a woman and her 12-year-old son, Jordan Chandler. The three hit it off, and a friendship begins.
He wanted to hang around kids because they were fun. And they didn't want anything from him. You know, he could have stupid balloon fights, and he could, do food fights, and, do all these silly things because, like when he was a kid, he was kind of like Benjamin Buttons, When he was a kid, he was a grown-up, and then when he was a grown-up, he was a kid.
Paulina Kokos was a juror in the 2005 Jackson trial. She tells Aphrodite Jones that Michael's relationship with children was an innocent one.
The relationship that was between the kids and Michael Jackson was genuine. He obviously adored children. It wasn't sexually. It was more of a heartfelt admiration that he maybe was jealous of their childhood.
Jackson invites the mother and son to visit him at Neverland, his sprawling 2,600-acre ranch in Santa Barbara County. They soon become a part of the pop star's entourage, traveling with him in private jets and staying in luxury hotels, a lifestyle reserved for royalty. At the time, the mother is divorced and involved in a heated custody battle over her son, Jordy. The boy's father, Evan Chandler, a Beverly Hills dentist, renegotiates his visitation rights, allowing the boy to spend more time and overnights with his dad. Attorney Tom Mesereau, Jackson's lawyer from 2005, believes the Chandlers had a hidden agenda.
That's the way it looked to us as we studied this particular chapter in Michael Jackson's life.
It seemed to me that they were looking for a lot from Michael, and when they didn't get it, suddenly there were allegations.
Yes, the father apparently did want to be a script writer. I think he did succeed in at least one or two projects. And they did want a lot of closeness with Michael Jackson. But then everybody who met Michael Jackson thought they were going to profit in some way. And that was one of the sad facts of his life, that he felt that virtually everybody who approached him wanted something. And I think it resulted in some lack of trust and some isolation and some loneliness.
As part of his new visitation arrangement, Jordy is permitted to spend nights at his father's home. Evan Chandler invites Jackson to sleep over with his son and allows the two to share the same bedroom. Late one night, the father checks in on the two and finds Jackson cuddled with his son in what he considers a compromising position. Chandler expresses concern that Jackson may be molesting his son. During what Chandler, a dentist, describes as a routine tooth extraction on his son, Chandler gives Jordy the sedative amytyl sodium. According to Chandler, the sedative prompts Jordy to confess that Michael Jackson molested him. Evan Chandler is the only witness hearing Jordy's allegations, yet he threatens to report the incident to authorities and prosecute Jackson. Once news breaks about a pending child molestation lawsuit against pop icon Michael Jackson, Santa Barbara District Attorney Tom Sneddon opens a criminal investigation. In December 1993, Jackson is served with a warrant for a strip search. Investigators hope to verify the boy's description of Jackson's genitals and details of patches of vitiligo, a skin disease in which Jackson was diagnosed in the 1980s.
One of the biggest questions in the world of Michael Jackson is whether or not he really had vitiligo.
I had met Michael's makeup artist, Karen Fay, and I asked her, I said, does Michael really have vitiligo? And she said, yeah. And he even tried to hide it from her for a while because it was something that he was very ashamed of. When you have, blotches of white when you're black, and your whole world is image, not only music and performance, but you got to look a certain part. It had to be really, really difficult for him.
Reluctantly and under legal pressure, Jackson agrees to cooperate and be examined by sheriff's deputies. Jackson is humiliated by the series of events. His business advisors determine he is far better off settling with the family rather than being dragged through an indefinite period of further humiliation and a possible criminal trial. Jackson pays the family a reported $20 million. Tom Mesereau considers the payoff may have been prompted by associates who stood to lose far more money if Jackson's upcoming performances are delayed.
It's interesting because that settlement money, which is around the ballpark of $20 million, is something that never leaves people's minds. It seems as though that will always continue to be a controversial aspect in the legacy of Michael Jackson.
Well, remember, he was a billionaire. This person had money-making opportunities around the world that were endless. This was someone who could wake up in the morning, decide to go to any capital in the world, and make millions of dollars if he wanted to. So the amount of money he paid was nothing compared to what he was worth and what he could earn. And the people around him said, Michael, write the check, get rid of the case, let's move on. We have so many business opportunities everywhere, on every continent, and that's what he did. And it came back to haunt him, unfortunately. I think it was the wrong advice. I think he should have fought it and won.
In the years to come, Jackson's fans continue to support him. But Jackson, still concerned over the lingering fallout from his 1993 settlement, decides in 2002 to allow British documentary filmmaker Martin Bashir to set the record straight and redeem his public image. Bashir convinces Michael he should be trusted to make a film chronicling Jackson's life, to show the world that he is misunderstood, that he is a compassionate humanitarian who wants to heal the world. When the documentary airs, Bashir turns out to be yet another person in Jackson's life who capitalizes on the pop star's fame. Waiting in the wings as part of the documentary is another family called the Arvizos, who will have their own agenda regarding Michael Jackson. When Michael Jackson settles the 1993 child molestation charges against him, those who know him say it's a pure business decision. His advisors view the settlement fee as a small price to pay to get the king of pop back on the road. Previous world tours earned him and members of his inner circle hundreds of millions of dollars. $20 million for Michael Jackson is pocket change.
They say that's like a quarter. You know, you're going to make all this money. He did.
They said it's like a quarter?
Yeah, it's like a quarter to you. You know, it was $20 million's a quarter to you, whatever the settlement was. He listened. He got talked into it, and he settled. Because he didn't want to go through a trial. He wanted to go on tour. He wanted to promote his record.
Michael Jackson decided to make a settlement with the young boy in question.
I think it was a big mistake. Michael Jackson was advised by business consultants and people in his music business to pay whatever it took to get rid of it. The idea was that they had bigger fish to fry. He was the biggest artist in the world. He had a glowing future in front of him, and this was just hurting him with bad press. So their feeling was, pay whatever it takes to settle it, get rid of it, and move on. And I think it was a mistake because I think it just sent a message to others that, you know, why work if you can sue Michael Jackson?
In September 1996, 3 years after the settlement, Jackson begins the History Tour. Over 10 months, he performs 82 concerts on 5 continents, 35 countries, 58 cities, entertaining 4.5 million fans, selling out stadiums from Germany to South Africa. The History Tour is the most successful of Jackson's career. Wherever he goes, loyal fans follow. But so does the dark shadow of the child molestation settlement. Tabloids worldwide continue to capitalize on Jackson's unfortunate story.
Their job is to sell a newspaper and sell a magazine. They could care less if they hurt your feelings, because they know you're not going to sue them. They know you're not going to spend all that money and go to court. So they write it, they sell a bunch of magazines, they go on to the next victim. They'll find somebody else. And once in a while, if it's a slow news week, they'll bring it back again.
In 2002, Michael Jackson decides it's time to put the salacious rumors to rest. He begins filming with British documentarian Martin Bashir, who quickly earns Jackson's trust.
Mr. Bashir claimed Princess Diana, whom Michael Jackson revered, had entrusted him with her biography. And Mr. Bashir gave a series of interviews where he continually praised Michael Jackson for his parenting skills and for many other things that he had done.
Do you come out here on your own?
Yeah,
How often?
all the time.
Jackson gives Bashir something he has never given any journalist: unprecedented access to his private life, allowing Bashir and his film crew to follow him for 8 months.
We began a journey together, across continents, through his past, and rapidly into the disturbing reality of his life today.
Michael Jackson believes Martin Bashir's documentary will finally reveal to the world an artist whose goal in life is to do good, not evil, to bring children joy, not harm, and to reveal a side of himself never before seen. Jackson confidently looks forward to the premiere of Living with Michael in 2003. It airs on television to record viewership in the UK and the US, but the film was not what Jackson expects or was promised.
His face, his denials about plastic surgery, his relationship with Blanket's mother, and of course the Neverland sleepovers. Confronting him wouldn't be easy, but now it had to happen.
Michael Jackson decided to do an interview with Martin Bashir. What do you think about that decision?
It was one of the worst decisions he ever made.
Martin Bashir is an interesting example of a man who made his name off of the back of Michael Jackson, lured him in under the pretense that he was going to help Michael Jackson's career by erasing any possibility of allegations of the past, by bringing forward Michael's ability and want and desire to help children and create this international children's holiday that Michael wanted so badly. He promised Michael that that's what this would be about, this international children's holiday, and that he'd make Michael Jackson look like another Princess Diana. That's what he promised.
Martin showed Michael a letter from Princess Diana
Thanking him?
thanking him for the show that he did with her, the interview that said, you know, Martin's a great guy, he'll take care of you, it was a great interview, whatever. And then Michael just figured, oh, he's okay then. If it was, you know, if Di liked him, he was fine. He didn't care. He wasn't trying to be Michael's friend.
What Bashir delivers instead are humiliating moments. The most controversial, one that Bashir possibly set up. The image of Gavin Arvizo, a cancer patient Jackson had once befriended, resting his head on Michael's shoulder, makes the front pages of tabloids worldwide. As does a comment from Jackson edited to imply the two slept in a bed together. The documentary, meant to free Michael Jackson from the 1993 molestation controversy, instead turns into a blazing new inferno. Jackson feels betrayed by Bashir.
Well, Mr. Jackson didn't say we sleep in the bed together. What Mr. Jackson said was Gavin Arvizo slept on his bed and he slept on the floor. And Mr. Jackson also said that nothing sexual ever goes on between he and children. And he did sort of lash out at the media a little bit about the way they try to blow things up into something they're not. He did talk about his settlement in the early 90s with another accuser, and he said he did it because he didn't want to put his family through an O.J. Simpson type trial. And you know, Michael was used, manipulated, and undermined by Mr. Bashir, in my opinion.
Michael Jackson is about to find out that the Martin Bashir documentary will have much more sinister implications in his life. An old adversary, Santa Barbara District Attorney Tom Sneddon, who wanted to file criminal charges against Jackson for child molestation in 1993, now resurfaces. Once Sneddon sees the Bashir documentary, he decides to use it against Jackson. He brings criminal charges against the pop star who he had been after for more than a decade. A search warrant is issued for Jackson's Neverland Ranch. Sheriff's deputies descend upon the property Michael Jackson considered his sanctuary. Criminal charges against the King of Pop are now filed.
The prosecution were alleging that Michael did not molest this boy before or during the documentary made by Bashir, but afterward, in the aftermath.
Well, that is correct, and they began to claim that the young man had been molested right after the Bashir documentary, and then to their horror, we came up with a videotape where the young man and his brothers and mother all praised Michael for being the nicest person they'd ever met. And at that point, the prosecution changed its theory and tried to say the molestation began after that videotape was put together. So it was kind of a two-step process, all of which was completely absurd.
Mickey Sherman is a criminal defense attorney and an expert on celebrity trials.
Once Tom Sneddon and the prosecutors got involved, then it's no longer a civil case. You can't just write out a check. It just doesn't work that way. So once the ball was rolling, once that fire was lit, then it was a fait accompli. There was going to be a trial, a criminal trial, and no amount of money was going to be available or possibly made available to buy these people off.
Those close to Michael believe the decision to settle the 1993 case only triggered another. But the documentary makes this case very different. The film, made possible by Jackson's trust in a filmmaker, turns into a vehicle for his own prosecution. This would not even have been possible, but the prosecutor himself changed a significant law that helped him build his case.
Is it true that Tom Sneddon actually passed a law in the state of California, especially designed for Michael Jackson?
Yes. After the 1993 incident, where a young man came forward to make allegations and then refused to cooperate with Mr. Sneddon's office, and Mr. Jackson was never criminally charged, Mr. Sneddon was very instrumental in having a law passed through the California State Legislature that would make it easier to bring in evidence of prior similar acts, as they're called in the law, in a case like this. And it's one of the most pro-prosecution statutes in the country in cases of alleged child molestation.
The prosecution in the Michael Jackson case, did they have a case? What is your opinion?
I think they got too emotionally invested in the case. I think Tom Sneddon seemed gleeful. He took a little too much pleasure in dishing out misery to Michael Jackson. That to me was the biggest tell of all. It sent the message that this is more than somebody who's probably committed a crime and I'm going to prosecute him. There was, again, such an eagerness to dish out some bad stuff to Michael Jackson that the credibility to me was, if not lost, certainly diminished.
What began in Michael's mind as a gesture of goodwill instead turns into a nightmare. For those close to the case, it was soon revealed that the Arvizo family appeared to be more like grifters and cons than friends of Michael Jackson.
They were targeting celebrities, in my opinion, and they ended up with the most gentle, kind-hearted celebrity of all, Michael Jackson. Michael was very naive, very kind, very gentle, wanted to see this child heal his cancer, and almost made it a cause that he would do what he could to help he and his family, but they started leaning on him more and more and more, and he got a very uncomfortable feeling about them. And of course, Chris Tucker warned him. He said, "Something's wrong, be careful, Michael." And one thing led to another, and he ended up on trial for his life.
Early March 2005. The small town of Santa Maria, California is playing host to one of the biggest trials in history. Michael Jackson faces 10 felony counts, which include child molestation and conspiracy to kidnap. It is enough to put him in prison for a very long time. Over 2,000 members of the media swarm the courthouse. Throngs of screaming fans chant as Michael Jackson's motorcade arrives.
It was incredible to watch because between the screaming fans, the 2,400 members of the media from around the world that were outside, and the craziness on the inside, all the allegations, it was a very nutty circumstance to withstand.
Cameras are banned from the courtroom, and reports dealing with the actual trial proceedings are few and far between. News networks generate huge ratings as they report the salacious details about his every move.
He never wavered, except for the day that he got sick and he went to the hospital, and that was the famous pajama day.
That was my responsibility. I'm at fault for that because he hurt his back that morning taking a walk through Neverland. He went to the hospital. I was notified. I told the judge, and he got very angry and said he's going to be here in 45 minutes or I'm going to yank his bail and put him in jail. I didn't want that to happen. So I told he and his people, you don't have time to go home. Come here. I don't want you in jail. So he followed my instructions and came right to the courthouse. He had a jacket, he had a shirt, and he had pajama bottoms. But that was really my doing, nobody else.
I covered this trial for Fox News for all of these months, thinking that Michael Jackson was guilty before ever being proven innocent. And I was following a pack of journalists who had him guilty before proven innocent. And that's the opposite of the way we do things in America. But apparently not. Because it seems like the more a story hits the airwaves, people are immediate suspects and being condemned in the court of public opinion before they ever get their day in trial in court.
There was a mentality out there that sensationalized, that twisted, that distorted the truth and the facts in the case.
Why do you think the media consistently went after Michael, even though he was exonerated, decided to continue to present him as a predator of children?
Well, he's the best known person in the world. He was a great target. He was an absolute genius, one of the greatest artistic geniuses we've ever seen in world history. He was an unusual person, partly because of his genius, and he became an excellent target for the media. All the media cares about are ratings and revenue. And if they could calculate that trying to take him down or destroy his reputation or watch him go to prison would help their ratings, they were more than happy to do so.
Jackson has lived his entire life in the spotlight. Now, his reputation as the world's most accomplished performer is overshadowed by rumors surrounding his alleged relationship with children. Despite his belief in Jackson's innocence, defense attorney Tom Mesereau knows this is going to be one of the toughest legal battles of his life. Michael Jackson is on trial for his life. If convicted of the 10 felony charges against him, he could go to prison for years or even decades. However, Jackson's defense attorney, Tom Mesereau, is slowly picking apart the prosecution's case. Dates are not lining up.
The dates of molestation were never established. It was supposed to happen after the Martin Bashir documentary, which doesn't make any sense at all.
Jackson's defense is discrediting all the prosecution's key witnesses.
When you talk about the molestation, I didn't believe the kid because the second day of testimony was the accuser's sister named Davelin. And she got on the stand and she said, I didn't know that I was molested by my father until my mother told me. That is in the transcripts. And when she said that, I looked around the room like, did anybody catch this? A lie is only really profitable when it's a big lie.
You and I know that there's actual evidence on tape
Recorded illegally.
of people plotting to frame Michael Jackson.
And that's why I knew he was innocent. I never believed he was guilty. As I had said from day one, he was innocent.
And that is exactly how he is found.
We, the jury, in the above entitled case, find the defendant not guilty of conspiracy.
He had a clean sweep on all 14 counts.
After a week of deliberations, the jury acquits Michael Jackson of all 14 charges, the 10 original felony counts and 4 misdemeanors. Yet many in the media continue to portray him as a guilty man.
And when they came out and said innocent, 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 a lot of people were disappointed.
Media was disappointed.
Yeah, because that wasn't the story they wanted to run.
Why do you think the media refused to accept the not guilty verdicts and continued to present Michael as a predator?
I think a lot of people in the media were very embarrassed and humiliated by the acquittals. They were predicting that he would be convicted. They were almost salivating about him being hauled off to jail. The build-up to his being sentenced to state prison would have been big ratings for them. And I think when he was completely exonerated with 14 not guilties, I think they were just embarrassed. I don't think they quite knew what to do.
No one said, oh my goodness, we're sorry. We reported all the wrong things. Let's make the record straight now. No. In fact, they ignored the not guilty verdicts, and the paparazzi went right into, oh, we think he might have molested another boy, or wow, somebody else came out of the woodwork. All these things were later found to be untrue, but they make great headlines on the cover of rag papers and cele tabloids. I believe that that trial destroyed Michael Jackson. I don't think he ever recovered from that trial.
He is adored by the world, but it is a ruthless reality, filled with greed, obsession, and betrayal. And it was the pressures created within this world that Michael Jackson could no longer face. All he wanted was to get some sleep. It turned out to be a wish that took his life. The Los Angeles County Coroner's Office said that when Michael Jackson died, the 5'9" singer weighed 136 pounds. He had bed sores on his body. It's believed the bed sores first developed in the months following his acquittal in the 2005 molestation trial.
He deteriorated physically during that trial. He was having trouble sleeping, he was having trouble eating. He would call me in the middle of the morning, 3, 4 o'clock, and he would be crying about what's going to happen to his children. He was terrified about the effect on his children of all of this. And even though he was always lucid and articulate with me, always cooperative, you could see physically that he was going downhill.
That had to have crushed Michael Jackson. I've put myself in his shoes. 5.5 months of your life just being exploited like that, and day after day going into the courtroom, and all these things that would, be said about him. That has to take away your spirit, that has to. I know it took me a long time to recuperate, and it wasn't me up there, so that had to have really taken its toll on him, his health, his whole way of thinking. Michael Jackson did so much for the world, as far as, inspiring them and doing good. I don't understand how people can dislike him. I don't get it. Just because of accusations and false, thoughts of how he is, because he has money, or because, they think he's weird. So what, We're all weird in our own way.
Jackson knew that his final tour would be difficult. But more than anything else, he wanted to show his children what it was like to watch the King of Pop on the stage.
He liked that he was Michael Jackson.
His children never got that chance.
When those kids came out at the memorial, they were normal kids. So Michael was a good father to those kids. I don't think he would have left those kids.
He was not crazy. He was never crazy.
And Michael believed that helping people was his job. He honestly believed that.
Michael Jackson did more good for more people around the globe than any entertainer that I can think of recent times. At the end of the day, that trial had an effect on Michael Jackson that was so profound. He never came back.
This is it. I mean, this is really it.